the world of Ethelgard was woven from starlight and dreams. Here, the night sky wasn't a distant, cold expanse, but a vibrant tapestry where stars shimmered so close you could almost reach out and touch them. And sometimes, if you were quiet enough, if you listened with your heart, you could hear them hum. From these living stars, a gentle rain of magic drifted down, a luminescence so fine it was almost invisible, yet so potent it touched every leaf, every stone, every sleeping creature. This was the Stardust. It was the lifeblood of Ethelgard, the very essence that made the glow moss on ancient trees pulse with soft light, that painted the wings of the dreamweavers, delicate moths with wings of spun moonlight, in iridescent hues, and that filled the quiet ponds with a shimmering, ethereal glow. Stardust nourished the earth, made the moon-petal flowers unfurl their luminous petals, and whispered forgotten melodies into the hearts of those who listened. For the people of Ethelgard, Stardust was not just magic. It was light, warmth, and the promise of beautiful dreams. Every evening, as the twin moons, Luna and Lunara, began their slow ascent, the air would thicken with a gentle, sparkling mist. Children would gather outside their treetop homes, holding out small polished gourds to catch the precious fall. A pinch of stardust in a bedtime story made the characters dance before your eyes. A sprinkle over a sleeping pet ensured sweet dreams, and a carefully collected vial could light a home through the longest, darkest night. Without it, Ethelgard, with all its wonder, would be a much dimmer, quieter place. In the heart of the whispering woods, nestled within a grove of towering moss-covered oaks, lay the village of Moonpetal Glade. Here, the houses were not built on the ground, but carved into the living wood of the ancient trees, connected by winding bridges of glowing vine and swaying rope ladders. And in one of the highest, most ancient oaks, lived a young girl named Ilara. Her hair, the color of twilight, often seemed to catch the lingering stardust, shimmering with tiny, almost imperceptible flecks of light, a gift from her birth under the brightest celestial shower. Ilara was a child of the stardust, her eyes, the deep blue of a clear night sky, seeing the world with a clarity few others possessed. She could feel the subtle shift in the air when a particularly potent shower was about to fall, and she swore she could hear the soft, sighing melody of the stardust as it settled upon the earth. More than anything, Ilara loved to sit on her branch balcony, watching the magical dust descend, feeling its gentle kiss upon her skin, and marveling at the way it transformed the familiar glade into a breathtaking wonderland. Her home was a cozy nest of carved wood and woven moss, filled with the scent of pine and the gentle hum of collected stardust in glowing lanterns. Her parents, kind and gentle folk who tended to the luminescent moss gardens, understood Ilara's deep connection to the magic of their world. But it was her Nana Ilara, her grandmother, with eyes like polished starlight and a memory as long as the ancient roots of the world trees, who truly nurtured Ilara's unique spirit. Nana Ilara knew all the old tales, the forgotten songs, and the secrets whispered by the wind. One evening, as the first shadows lengthened and the twin moons began their slow climb, Ilara settled onto her branch balcony, her small polished gourds ready. She waited for the familiar shimmering mist, for the soft, whispering fall. But the air remained clear. The first stars appeared, sharp and bright, yet no stardust drifted down. She frowned, thinking it might be a passing cloud, a temporary lull. But as the night deepened and the moons shone fully, their light seemed starker, colder, unsoftened by the usual magical glow. The moonpetal flowers, usually unfurling their petals with a soft inner light, remained tightly closed, or opened only halfway, their glow a faint, sickly flicker. The dreamweavers, usually flitting through the glade like living constellations, were nowhere to be seen. A silence, heavy and unusual, settled over Moonpetal Glade. It wasn't the comforting silence of a world asleep, but a quiet that felt empty. Ilara clutched her gourds, their smooth surfaces cold against her fingers. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The next night, and the night after that, brought the same unsettling emptiness. The stardust was not just scarce, it was almost entirely absent. The glow moss on the trees began to dim, its vibrant emerald fading to a dull, muted green. The water in the starlight pond, usually a mirror of the heavens, was now just dark, still water, reflecting nothing but the unadorned moon. A chill began to creep into the air, a chill that had nothing to do with the season, and everything to do with the fading magic. Worry began to ripple through Moon-Petal Glade. Villagers spoke in hushed tones, their faces etched with concern. The oldest among them remembered whispers of such times, of legends that spoke of the Stardust withdrawing, leaving Ethelgard vulnerable and cold. Some believed it was merely a natural cycle, a time for the stars to rest, but Elara knew better. She felt the absence deep within her bones, a dull ache where the vibrant hum of Stardust used to be. The very air felt thinner, less alive. "Nana," Elara asked one morning, her voice small, "why isn't the Stardust falling? The moon petals are wilting and even the whisper wind chimes sound sad." She pointed to the delicate glass chimes that usually sang with the lightest breeze, now hanging silent and still, their stardust cores dim. Nana Elara, seated by the hearth where a small, almost imperceptible stardust fire usually burned with gentle warmth, sighed. Her ancient hands gnarled like the roots of the oldest trees, smoothed Elara's hair. "The stars are not resting, little one. The stardust is not merely scarce, it is receding. It is as if the great breath of Ethelgard has been drawn inward, held." Her voice was a soft rumble, like distant thunder filled with a deep sorrow. "But why?" Elara pressed, her brow furrowed. "Where has it gone?" Nana Elara's gaze drifted to the window, to the dimming glade. "There are old stories, Elara, very old. Stories of a time when the heart of Ethelgard, the great crystal that draws the stardust from the celestial veil, grew faint. It is said that when the heart dims, the stardust retreats, like a shy creature hiding from the dark." Elara's own heart gave a hopeful leap. "Then we must reawaken it. We must find the heart." Nana Elara smiled, a faint, sad smile. "That is a journey for a brave soul, my Stardust child. The heart of Ethelgard lies deep within the whispering peaks, far beyond the familiar paths of the glade, through lands where shadows might truly hold teeth. It is a place spoken of only in legend, a place few have ever sought, and fewer still have found." But Elara wasn't deterred. The thought of Ethelgard without its shimmering lifeblood, without its dreams and its magic, was unbearable. She had to do something. That very afternoon, driven by a fierce determination, she ventured out, not on her usual paths, but towards the edge of the known woods. She carried only a small satchel, a water skin, and a growing sense of purpose. As she stepped into the deeper woods, where the ancient trees grew so thick that even the faint moonlight struggled to pierce their canopy, a flicker of movement caught her eye. From behind a thicket of dying glow moss, a small creature emerged. It was a moonfox cub, its fur the color of twilight, its eyes like twin silver embers. It was Flicker, a mischievous little fox Elara had befriended weeks ago, who often darted through the glade, chasing the last vestiges of Stardust. Flicker, usually bursting with playful energy, seemed subdued. Its usually vibrant tail, tipped with a plume of shimmering silver, was dull and listless. It nudged Elara's hand with its nose, a soft whine escaping its throat. Even Flicker felt the lack of Stardust. "Don't worry, Flicker," Elara whispered, stroking the soft fur. "We'll find it. We have to." Together, they moved deeper into the woods, the silence growing heavier with each step. The glow moss, which usually illuminated their path, was now completely dark, forcing Elara to rely on the faint moonlight filtering through the dense canopy. The air grew colder, and the usual chorus of night creatures was eerily absent. The forest felt like a forgotten dream, slowly fading into nothingness. Elara paused by a stream, its water sluggish and dark. Usually, the stream would bubble and gurgle with a faint inner light, its banks lined with luminous water lilies. Now, it was just a regular stream, cold and uninviting. She dipped her fingers in, feeling the chill. This was not her Ethelgard. This was a world slowly losing its magic. "The heart of Ethelgard," she murmured, remembering Nana Elara's words. It must be true. She thought of the ancient stories Nana Elara had told her, tales of the first star fall, of the creation of the great crystal, and of the guardians who tended its light. But never had the stories spoken of how to find it, only of its existence. As she walked, her mind raced, piecing together fragments of lore. Nana Elara had often spoken of the Whispering Peaks as the crown of Ethelgard, a place where the mountains touched the very edge of the celestial veil. It was a place of powerful magic, but also of ancient untamed forces. No one from Moonpetal Glade had ventured there in generations. Suddenly, Flicker let out a soft yelp and began sniffing excitedly at the base of an ancient gnarled tree. A faint, almost imperceptible shimmer pulsed from a knot in the bark. It was the faintest trace of stardust, a tiny pocket of lingering magic. Elara knelt, carefully touching the spot. Wow! The warmth of it was like a forgotten memory. Flicker looked up at her, its silver eyes wide and hopeful. It was a sign. A faint but undeniable sign that the stardust still existed, somewhere. Elara knew she couldn't continue without more guidance. She needed Nana Elara. She turned back, Flicker trotting faithfully at her heels, a renewed sense of urgency in her steps. When she returned to her home, Nana Elara was waiting for her, a knowing look in her deep starlit eyes. "You felt it, didn't you, little one?" Nana Elara said, her voice soft. The tug of the stardust, calling to its truest child. She held out her hand. In her palm lay a small, smooth piece of obsidian, dark as the deepest night, yet faintly humming with a hidden energy. It was ancient, worn smooth by time, and seemed to drink in the surrounding gloom. "This is a star compass," Nana Elara explained. "It was given to me by my own grandmother, who received it from hers. It does not point north or south, but towards the strongest lingering stardust, and perhaps with enough will, towards its source." As she spoke, a faint silvery glow pulsed within the obsidian, a barely perceptible heartbeat of light. Elara gasped, reaching out to touch the stone. It was cool against her skin, but inside a tiny spark of warmth ignited. "It glows," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "It does," Nana Elara confirmed. "But only when stardust is near, or when its purpose is clear. It will be your guide, Elara, through the fading paths of Athelgard." Her gaze grew serious. "The journey will be long, and it will be perilous. The Whispering Peaks are a place of ancient magic, and not all of it is kind. You will encounter creatures of shadow and illusion, born of the stardust's absence. But you carry the light within you, Elara, the light of hope and the love for our world." Elara clutched the star compass tightly. Its faint warmth spread through her hand, strengthening her resolve. She looked at Nana Elara, then at her parents, who stood silently, their faces filled with a mixture of fear and pride. They knew, as she did, that this was more than just a quest, it was a necessity. "I will go," Elara declared, her voice steady and clear. "I will find the heart of Athelgard, and bring back the stardust." Her parents embraced her tightly, a silent blessing. Nana Elara pressed a small woven pouch into her hand. "Food for your journey, and a vial of the last true stardust collected from the heart tree. Use it wisely, for it is precious now." Elara packed her satchel with the essentials: the water skin, the food pouch, her warmest cloak, and the vial of stardust, which pulsed with a soft, steady glow, a beacon of hope in the growing gloom. The star compass she wore around her neck, its faint glow a constant companion. Flicker, sensing the gravity of the moment, sat patiently by her feet, its silver eyes fixed on her. As the first sliver of dawn painted the sky in muted grays and purples, Elara stood at the edge of Moonpetal Glade, her home looking strangely subdued in the dim light. The ancient trees, once so vibrant, seemed to droop with weariness. The familiar hum of magic was gone, replaced by a deep, unsettling quiet. But within Elara, a new hum had begun, a quiet thrum of determination. With Flicker trotting confidently beside her, its tail now held a little higher, Elara took a deep breath. She looked towards the distant, jagged silhouettes of the Whispering Peaks, barely visible through the morning mist, a challenge and a promise. The path ahead was unknown, shrouded in the deepening shadows of a stardustless world, but Elara felt a pull, a calling deep within her soul. Her journey to save Athelgard had begun. The path from her village, once a familiar ribbon of moon-kissed earth, now felt like a tapestry woven with deeper shadows. The morning mist, usually shimmering with stray motes of stardust, clung heavily, dull, and gray. Elara's boots, though sturdy, made little sound on the damp ground, a quiet echo in a world suddenly hushed. Flicker, its small paws barely disturbing the dew-laden grass, trotted ahead, its keen nose twitching, occasionally casting a glance back at Elara as if to reassure her or perhaps to seek reassurance itself. The initial stretch of the journey was through the gently rolling hills that cradled Ethelgard's northern villages. These hills, typically dotted with luminous moonpetal blooms that unfurled at dawn, were now strangely muted. The moon petals, usually a soft silver blue, were merely pale, their petals tightly furled, sensing the absence of their celestial nourishment. Elara reached out, her fingers gently brushing a closed bloom. There was no warmth, no faint pulse of light, she remembered. A pang of sorrow, cold and sharp, pierced her heart. This was the first true evidence of the Stardust's loss she had personally touched, and it deepened her resolve. The hum within her, that quiet thrum of determination, pulsed a little stronger. It wasn't a magic she understood, not like the spells whispered by the village elders, but a feeling, a resonance. As she walked, she found herself listening not just with her ears, but with this new internal sense. The world around her, though dimmed, wasn't entirely silent. There was a faint sighing in the wind, a whisper in the rustling leaves that spoke of forgotten light. They pressed on, past the last familiar orchards where the star-glow apples usually ripened with an inner luminescence. Now, the branches hung heavy with ordinary fruit, their skins dull, their cores lacking the sweet, sparkling juice that was Ethelgard's delight. Flicka, usually quick to snatch a fallen apple, merely sniffed at one, then nudged it with its nose before looking up at Elara with a puzzled tilt of its head. "They're not the same, are they, Flicka?" Elara murmured, her voice soft in the stillness. Flicka whined softly in agreement, its tail drooping slightly. As the sun climbed higher, breaking through the persistent mist, its light felt thin, diluted, as if filtered through a veil of sorrow. The vibrant colors of the world seemed leached, leaving behind a palette of muted greens and browns. The air, usually crisp and sweet with the faint scent of magic, now carried a subtle earthy tang, a scent of nature struggling. By midday, they reached the edge of the Whispering Woods, the ancient forest that served as the gateway to the foothills of the peaks. Even from a distance, the woods looked different. The canopy, usually a vibrant mosaic of greens, golds, and the occasional sky blue of sun-kissed elms, was now a uniform, deep emerald, almost black in places where the light failed to penetrate. No shimmer, no faint magical auras danced between the branches. The Whispering Woods, Elara breathed, a knot tightening in her stomach. Tales of these woods filled the village lore, of ancient spirits, of trees that remembered the world's beginning, of paths that shifted with the moon's phases. Now they seemed less like a place of wonder, and more like a silent, watchful sentinel. As they stepped beneath the colossal boughs of the first ancient oak, the change was immediate and profound. The air grew colder, heavier, and the silence deepened, broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath their feet and the occasional chirp of an unseen bird, a sound that seemed to carry an undertone of melancholy. The light that filtered through the thick canopy was a dim, mossy green, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like forgotten memories. The trees themselves were magnificent, their trunks gnarled and ancient, their branches reaching like arthritic fingers towards a sky they could no longer fully see. But something was amiss. The moss that usually glowed with faint bioluminescence at their bases was dull and brittle. The delicate, bell-shaped bloomlights that typically chimed with soft light were closed, their petals shriveled. Flicka pressed closer to Elara's leg, its small body a warm comfort. Its ears twitched constantly, picking up the subtle shifts in the forest's mood. Elara, too, felt the change. The hum within her, which had been a steady pulse, now felt like a sensitive antenna, picking up faint signals of distress from the ancient trees. They followed a game trail, barely visible, winding deeper into the woods. Every step felt like an intrusion into a sacred, suffering place. Elara found herself reaching out, her hand brushing against rough bark, a silent apology. She could almost feel the deep, slow ache of the forest, a profound weariness. After what felt like hours, they came across a small clearing. In its center stood a magnificent willow tree, its weeping branches usually adorned with thousands of tiny, shimmering dew globes, each reflecting a fragment of stardust. Now, its branches hung limp and gray, its leaves a sickly yellow. At its base, nestled amongst the roots, was a small glowing patch of vibrant blue. Elara gasped softly. It was a cluster of moon petal blooms, but unlike the pale closed ones outside the woods, These were attempting to unfurl, their petals trembling, emitting a faint, struggling azure light. They pulsed weakly, as if clinging to the last vestiges of a dying dream. "Flicker, look," Elara whispered, kneeling beside them. The hum within her intensified, a sympathetic vibration. These balloons were fighting, trying desperately to recall the Stardust's touch. She extended her hand, not touching, but hovering over the struggling flowers. She closed her eyes, focusing on the hum, on that quiet determination within her. She imagined it as a gentle warmth, a soft, encouraging light, flowing from her center, down her arm, and towards the moon petals. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a faint shimmer, almost imperceptible, passed over the blooms. Their struggling light pulsed a little stronger, a fraction brighter. The petals, which had been trembling, seemed to relax slightly, unfurling just a tiny bit more. It wasn't much, but it was something. Elara opened her eyes, a surge of wonder and a fresh wave of determination washing over her. She couldn't bring back the Stardust, not yet. But perhaps, with this strange hum, this budding magic, she could offer comfort, a spark of hope. "You felt that, didn't you?" she murmured to Flicker, who was now sniffing intently at the slightly brighter blooms. The fox gave a soft yip, its tail wagging a little. It seemed to understand. Encouraged, Elara continued her journey, now with a new sense of purpose beyond simply reaching the peaks. She was not just a seeker, she was a caretaker, a temporary guardian of the fading magic. As they ventured deeper, the forest seemed to grow denser, the ancient trees pressing in more closely. The path, barely discernible before, now faded into a tangle of roots and moss-covered stones. The air grew stiller, heavier, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant, mournful call of a wood owl. Then Elara heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible sound, like rustling silk or dry leaves skittering across stone. It was rhythmic, steady, and seemed to emanate from a small rock-strewn gully just off their fading path. Flicker's ears swiveled, its hackles rising slightly. "What is it, boy?" Elara whispered, her hand instinctively going to the small pouch at her belt, though she carried no weapon, only a few dried berries and a water skin. They crept closer, peering through a thicket of ancient ferns. The gully opened into a small hidden glade, bathed in the same muted green light that permeated the forest. In the center of the glade, a creature was tending to a patch of dull gray-green lichen. It was unlike anything Elara had ever seen. It stood about as tall as Elara herself, its body a mosaic of bark, moss, and twisting roots, giving it the appearance of a walking tree. Its eyes were two luminous amber orbs, sunk deep within a craggy ancient face. Delicate, leaf-like appendages sprouted from its head, and its long, slender arms, made of flexible vines, moved with surprising grace as it carefully brushed away dead leaves from the lichen. This was no ordinary creature. This was a Trent, a guardian of the oldest parts of the forest, a being of deep magic and ancient memory. But this Trent was different from the ones in the stories. Its bark was cracked and dry, its moss patchy, and the luminous quality in its amber eyes seemed to flicker, as if struggling to stay lit. As it worked, it hummed a low, mournful tune, the sound Elara had heard. It was a song of sorrow, of fading life. Elara felt the hum within her pulse wildly, resonating with the Trent's distress. She knew instinctively that she couldn't simply pass by. "Forgive my intrusion, venerable one," Elara said softly, stepping into the glade. Her voice, though quiet, seemed to echo loudly in the stillness. The Trent froze, its vine-like arms ceasing their movement. Slowly, ponderously, its head turned, its amber eyes fixing upon Elara. There was no anger in its gaze, only a profound ancient sadness. "A child of Ethelgard," the Trent rumbled, its voice like the creaking of old branches in a storm. "And one who carries a faint echo of the star song. It has been many moons since such a light walked these woods." "My name is Elara," she replied, bowing her head respectfully. "And this is Flicker. We journey to the Whispering Peaks, seeking the source of the Stardust's disappearance." The Trent let out a sigh that rustled all the leaves on its body. "The Stardust, the lifeblood of our world, it has faded, child, and with it the songs of the forest, the dreams of the sleeping earth, the very pulse of creation. I am Thistle Root, guardian of this glade, and I feel its absence in every fiber of my being. Elara's heart ached for the ancient being. I felt it too. The moon petals, the starglow apples, even the hum within me feels the loss. She paused, then, emboldened by the trent's gentle nature, asked, "Is there anything I can do?" I saw the moon petals struggling, and I tried to send them a little of my own, well, my own feeling, my own warmth. Thistleroot's amber eyes seemed to brighten slightly, a faint flicker of renewed interest. "You possess the empathy of the bloom child, a rare gift, often dormant until the world itself cries out. To share your inner light, even a spark, is a powerful act of connection. It is not stardust, but it is a resonance, a reminder to the fading magic that it is not forgotten." The trent slowly, painstakingly, reached one of its vine arms towards a patch of the grey lichen it had been tending. "This is star moss, Elara. It once glowed with an inner light feeding on the ambient stardust. Now, it withers. It is the memory keeper of the forest, holding the echoes of ancient songs and forgotten paths. If it dies entirely, much knowledge will be lost forever." Elara looked at the dull lichen, then back at Thistleroot's mournful eyes. Can I try to help it too?" "You may," Thistleroot rumbled, a faint rustling smile seeming to touch its ancient face. "Place your hand upon it. Listen with your heart. Let your inner hum resonate with its fading song." Elara knelt, Flicker settling quietly beside her, watching with intense interest. She placed her palm gently on the star moss. It felt cold and strangely brittle, like ancient parchment. She closed her eyes, focusing on the hum within her, imagining it as a warm, golden thread connecting her to the moss. She thought of the moon petals, of the struggling world, of Thistleroot's sorrow. She poured her determination, her empathy, her small spark of inner light into the connection. Slowly, subtly, a faint, almost ghostly shimmer passed over the star moss. A few tiny, almost invisible flecks of silver-green light sparked within its grey surface, like distant, fading stars. It wasn't the vibrant glow Thistleroot described, but it was a clear sign of life, a brief, fragile rekindling. Thistleroot sighed, a sound of deep relief. "You have touched it, Elara. You have reminded it of the Stardust's promise. This is a gift, child, a sign of the path you must follow." The trent then slowly extended another of its vine arms, this one holding a small, smooth, dark grey stone. It looked like an ordinary pebble, but as Elara watched, a tiny, almost imperceptible silver thread, like a wisp of stardust, pulsed faintly within its surface. "This is a stone of echoes," Thistleroot explained, its voice gaining a touch of its ancient strength. "It was crafted long ago by the first lore-keepers of Ethelgard, infused with the faint echoes of the stardust itself. It will not restore the stardust, but it will hum softly when you are near a place where the stardust's memory is strongest, or where its return might be glimpsed. It will also help you perceive the faintest echoes of magic that still cling to this world." Elara took the stone. It felt cool and smooth in her hand, and she could feel a very faint, almost imperceptible vibration within it, a tiny whisper of the stardust's former glory. "Thank you, Thistleroot. I will guard it with my life." "You carry the true light, Elara," the trent said, its amber eyes fixed on her with a knowing gaze. "The Whispering Peaks hold many secrets, but they also guard the oldest memories of Ethelgard. Seek the Heartstone of the Peaks, for it is said to be the nexus where the stardust first touched our world. Be wary of the mists of forgetfulness that cling to the higher slopes. They can steal your memories and dull your purpose." With a final rustling nod, Thistleroot settled back amongst its roots, its luminous eyes now holding a little more light, a glimmer of the hope Elara had offered. Elara bowed once more, a deep sense of gratitude filling her. The encounter had given her not only a tangible tool but also a renewed sense of confidence in her own burgeoning abilities. As Elara and Flicker left the glade, the forest seemed to hold a different feel. The silence was still there, but it no longer felt like a silence of despair, more like a silence of watchful waiting. The stone of echoes, warm in her palm, pulsed faintly, a tiny compass guiding her spirit. Their journey continued, the forest growing wilder and more untamed with every step. The trees became colossal, their branches interlocking overhead to form a dense, shadowy ceiling. Sunlight became a rare commodity, filtering through only in scattered ethereal shafts that danced with motes of ordinary dust, not stardust. The air grew heavy with the scent of ancient earth, damp leaves, and something else, a faint, almost metallic tang, like distant thunder. They walked for what felt like an eternity, navigating around gnarled roots that snaked across the forest floor like slumbering serpents. Flicker, ever vigilant, sniffed at every shadow, its small body a beacon of unwavering companionship. Elara, guided by the subtle hum within her and the faint pulse of the Stone of Echoes, found herself moving with a new intuition, her steps lighter, her senses sharper. She noticed details she might have missed before. A faint, almost erased symbol carved into an ancient stone, a patch of unusually vibrant moss clinging to a dying log, as if stubbornly refusing to give up its color. The forest eventually began to thin, the trees giving way to a more open, yet still ancient landscape. They emerged from the dense woods onto a sloping plain, covered in tall, silvery grasses that rustled like whispered secrets in the absent wind. Ahead, shrouded in a soft ethereal haze, lay a river. This was the River of Misted Memories, a legendary waterway said to flow from the very heart of the Whispering Peaks. In the tales, its waters shimmered with liquid stardust, reflecting the dreams and forgotten joys of Athelgard. Now, it was a wide, slow-moving river, its surface a dull, opaque gray, almost indistinguishable from the mist that clung to its banks. No shimmering light, no playful eddies of stardust-infused current. Elara approached the riverbank with a sense of reverence. The air here was strangely cool and still, and the silence was profound, even deeper than in the ancient woods. The hum within her pulsed steadily, and the Stone of Echoes vibrated more distinctly in her hand, a soft, encouraging thrum. "The River of Misted Memories," Elara whispered, the words sounding hollow in the quiet. Flicker trotted to the water's edge, dipped its nose, then recoiled with a small, startled whine. "What is it, Flicker?" Elara knelt, peering at the water. It looked like ordinary, slightly muddy river water, but there was something about it that felt empty. She slowly extended her hand towards the surface, not touching, but hovering, just as she had with the moon petals and the star moss. She focused her inner hum, letting it reach out, searching for the river's essence. As her hand drew closer, a strange sensation washed over her, not cold, not warm, but a feeling of profound wistfulness. It was as if she were touching a forgotten melody, a half-remembered dream. Then, fragmented images began to flicker at the very edge of her mind's eye. A child laughing beneath a shower of stardust, a young couple dancing under a moonlit sky that glittered with 1,000 tiny lights, an elder telling stories by a hearth that burned with soft, magical flame. These were not her memories, yet they felt intimately familiar, echoes of a vibrant, stardust-filled Athelgard. The images were fleeting, ghostly, like reflections in a distorting mirror. But they were powerful. They spoke of a world brimming with light, magic, and joy, a stark contrast to the muted reality she now inhabited. A wave of sorrow, deep and aching, washed over her, a shared grief for a lost world. But amidst the sorrow, there was also a spark of something else, fierce determination. These memories, even fragmented, were a testament to what Athelgard could be again. They were a promise, a beacon. Elara withdrew her hand, tears stinging her eyes. Flicker nudged her hand, licking her fingers gently, as if sensing her emotional turmoil. "They're memories, Flicker," Elara murmured, her voice thick. "Memories of the stardust, the river remembers." The Stone of Echoes pulsed steadily in her palm, a comforting rhythm. It wasn't just a guide, it was a link, a connection to the very soul of Athelgard. They had to cross the river. There was no bridge, only a few moss-covered stepping stones that disappeared into the opaque water. The mist, thicker here, swirled around her knees, obscuring her view of the opposite bank. Taking a deep breath, Elara tested the first stone with her foot. It was solid. She placed another, then another, careful to maintain her balance. The current, though slow, felt strong beneath her, a silent, persistent push. Flicker, with a surprising agility, leaped from stone to stone, its footing sure. Midway across the river, the mist intensified, swirling into thick, opaque clouds that obscured everything. Elara felt a momentary panic, a disorienting sense of being utterly alone in a world of grey. But then, the hum within her pulsed, strong and unwavering, and the Stone of Echoes warmed in her hand, guiding her forward. She concentrated on the feeling, on the faint, echoing memories that still clung to the water around her, and took another step. The crossing felt like an eternity, a journey through a veil of forgotten dreams. But eventually, her foot met solid ground, and the mist began to thin, revealing the other bank. They were no longer on a flat plain. The ground immediately began to rise, rocky and uneven, covered in sparse, hardy vegetation. The air grew colder, thinner, carrying the scent of ancient stone and ice. Above them, looming through the dissipating mist, were the sheer, colossal faces of the whispering peaks. They were even more imposing than Ilara had imagined. Jagged and dark, their summits were lost in a perpetual shroud of gray cloud, like sleeping giants. No snow-capped peaks glittered under the sun. Instead, they seemed to absorb the light, radiating an aura of profound age and mystery. Here, the hum within Ilara vibrated almost constantly, a strong, resonant thrum that filled her chest. The stone of echoes glowed with a faint, steady silver light, no longer just a pulse, but a continuous, gentle emanation. "We're here, Flicker," Ilara breathed, her voice filled with awe and a touch of trepidation. The journey had been long, challenging, and full of sorrowful discoveries, but it had also solidified her purpose and awakened her inner strength. At the very base of the steepest climb, almost hidden by a tumble of ancient boulders, she saw it. A colossal archway, carved from the same dark, unyielding stone as the mountains themselves. It wasn't ornate, but simple, powerful, and utterly ancient. Above the arch, half obscured by moss and time, was a single stylized carving, a spiral of stars emanating from a central point, the symbol of the Stardust. As Ilara stepped closer, the stone of echoes in her hand flared with a soft, bright silver light, illuminating the ancient carving. And from deep within the archway, she felt a powerful pull, a magnetic draw that resonated with the very core of her being. The hum within her intensified, feeling less like a gentle thrum and more like a rising song, a melody of hope and discovery. The mists of forgetfulness, Thistleroot had warned. They swirled around the base of the arch, thick and insidious, but the light from her stone seemed to push them back, creating a small, clear space around her. Ilara took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the entrance to the peaks. This was it, the true beginning of her quest. Whatever lay beyond that ancient archway, she knew she was ready. She had faced the sorrow of a fading world, connected with its struggling magic, and found strength within herself. With Flicker trotting steadfastly beside her, its tail held high, Ilara stepped forward, into the heart of the whispering peaks, into the unknown. The journey to save Athelgard was far from over, but the path ahead, though shrouded in mystery, now held a glimmer of promising light. The moment Ilara stepped through the ancient archway, a profound shift rippled through the very air around her. It wasn't a sudden change in scenery, but a subtle, pervasive alteration of existence itself. The biting wind of the outer peaks softened, replaced by a cool, almost velvety breeze that carried the scent of wet stone and something else, a faint, sweet fragrance like blossoms that had never known the sun. The gray, fractured stone of the pass gave way to a landscape that shimmered with an otherworldly luminescence, as if the very mountains had absorbed starlight and were now exhaling it in a soft, perpetual glow. She found herself on a narrow, winding path carved into the side of a colossal mountain face, but this mountain was unlike any she had ever seen. Its slopes were not rough rock, but vast, undulating tapestries of deep violet and indigo minerals, interspersed with veins of silver that pulsed with a gentle, inner light. Strange crystalline flora sprouted from crevices, their leaves like delicate shards of amethyst and emerald, chiming softly as the breeze brushed past them. Above, the sky was a deep, velvety twilight, even though it had been late afternoon when she entered. Constellations she didn't recognize glittered like scattered jewels, larger and brighter than any she had ever witnessed in Athelgard. "Oh, Flicker," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper, afraid to disturb the profound serenity of the place. Flicker, usually so bouncy, had adopted a posture of quiet awe. His tail was no longer held high in defiance, but twitched softly, his ears swiveling to catch the faint musical sounds that drifted on the air, a harmony of wind chimes, distant, resonant hums, and the trickling of unseen water. His fur seemed to absorb the ambient light, making him glow with a faint, playful iridescence. The path ahead was shrouded in a swirling ethereal mist that clung to the mountain curves like forgotten dreams. It wasn't the heavy damp fog of the outer peaks, but a luminous pearlescent haze that seemed to breathe, ebbing and flowing with an almost sentient grace. This must be the heart of the Whispering Peaks, she realized, a place truly touched by ancient magic. As they ventured deeper, the whispers began. At first, Elara thought it was just the wind sighing through the crystalline foliage, or the echoes of water cascading down unseen falls. But then she distinguished patterns, faint, elusive voices that seemed to speak just beyond the edge of her hearing. They weren't words, not precisely, but feelings, impressions, a sense of immense age, of quiet watchfulness, of deep sorrow, and an even deeper, enduring hope. They seemed to emanate from the very stone, from the mist, from the shimmering plants. "Do you hear that flicker?" she murmured, reaching down to stroke his soft fur. He nudged her hand, his head cocked, and let out a soft whine, as if agreeing. His whiskers twitched, and he looked towards a particularly thick swirl of mist ahead, his eyes narrowed. The whispers grew clearer, weaving around her like strands of a half-forgotten melody. They tugged at her thoughts, trying to draw her attention in 1,000 different directions. "This way, little one. No, the other. A secret lies here. A memory unfolds there." It was disorienting, a beautiful, confusing symphony of suggestions. Elara felt a familiar warmth unfurl in her chest, the connection to Ethelgard's magic she had cultivated. It pulsed, responding to the overwhelming magical presence of the peaks, almost like a heartbeat. She took a deep breath, letting the chaotic beauty wash over her, but also trying to ground herself. She remembered the elder's words, "Listen not to every voice, but to the truth within your own heart." Closing her eyes for a moment, Elara focused on the gentle thrum of her own magic, letting it be a steady anchor in the swirling sea of whispers. She imagined it as a small bright flame within her, unwavering. When she opened her eyes, the whispers still danced around her, but they no longer felt quite so compelling. She could perceive them as a chorus, rather than individual demands. "We need a path, Flicker," she said, more to herself than to the creature, but Flicker seemed to understand. He began sniffing at the ground, his nose twitching, then bounded a few steps ahead, his tail giving a tentative wag towards a faint indentation in the glowing stone path. Following Flicker, Elara noticed that the crystalline plants along Einith's specific stretch of path seemed to glow a little brighter, their gentle chimes a fraction more insistent. It was as if they were subtly guiding her, not with words but with their very light and sound. The mist here was less dense, parting almost willingly before them. They continued their ascent, the path gradually widening, leading them higher and higher into the core of the peaks. Eventually, the path culminated in a vast circular plateau, bathed in the same ethereal twilight. In the center of this plateau stood a truly magnificent sight. It was a structure unlike any Elara had ever imagined. Not built, but grown. A colossal living archway, far grander than the one she had just passed through, stood majestic and silent. It was formed from two immense spiraling spires of pure glowing crystal, reminiscent of ancient trees, their branches intertwining at the apex to form a perfect luminous arc. The crystal pulsed with an inner light shifting through all the colors of the twilight sky, deep sapphire, amethyst, emerald, and shimmering gold. Within the arch, not a void but a swirling vortex of liquid light, like a window into a nebula, shimmered and beckoned. But before she could approach, a low, resonant hum vibrated through the plateau, shaking the very ground beneath her feet. From behind the crystal archway, a figure began to coalesce from the mist. It was immense, formed from the same luminous crystal as the arch, but shaped like a guardian. Its form was vaguely humanoid but elongated and graceful, with broad, sweeping shoulders and a head that seemed to be a cluster of glowing, multifaceted gems. No discernible face, yet Elara felt an ancient, unwavering gaze settle upon her. This was no ordinary mountain. This was a sentinel, a protector of the peaks. It moved with a slow, deliberate grace, its crystalline limbs making no sound on the glowing stone. It radiated an aura of immense power and profound stillness. The whispers of the peaks, which had been so pervasive, fell silent, hushed in the presence of this being. Elara felt a flicker of fear, a primal instinct to flee, but she stood her ground. This was why she had come. This was the challenge she had to face. She felt the magic in her chest surge, not in fear, but in recognition, a kinship with the ancient power before her. Who approaches the heart of the Whispering Peaks? The sentinel's voice resonated, not through the air, but directly into her mind, a deep, crystalline chord that echoed in her very soul. What purpose brings a mortal child to this sacred threshold? Elara took a steadying breath. I am Elara from Ethelgard. I come seeking knowledge, a way to mend the fading magic of my world. She spoke with a clarity and conviction that surprised even herself. Our world withers, and I believe its essence, its very lifeblood, flows from places like this. The sentinel's glowing head tilted slightly, an unnerving gesture. Ethelgard, yes. Its song grows faint. Its threads unravel. Many have sought to mend it, with ambition and greed in their hearts. They found only silence. I seek not power for myself, Elara countered, her gaze unwavering. Only to restore balance, to help Ethelgard remember its own song. She felt a sudden urge to prove her sincerity, to show the sentinel the truth of her intentions. She reached out, not physically, but with her mind, with her magic, letting the warm, golden light within her expand, reaching towards the sentinel. She offered it a glimpse of her journey, the fading glimmers of her home, the sorrow she felt, the connection she had forged with the struggling magic, the strength she had found in the face of despair. She showed it flicker, a beacon of loyalty and joy. The sentinel remained still, absorbing her offering. Its crystalline form shimmered, and Elara felt its presence shift, not in anger or aggression, but in a profound probing. It was searching, discerning, weighing the truth of her spirit. Flicker, sensing the intensity, pressed against Elara's leg, a low growl rumbling in his chest, ready to defend. After what felt like an eternity, the sentinel's form rippled, and its inner light intensified. You speak with the voice of the land itself. It resonated in her mind. A rare resonance in these waning days. The sorrow of Ethelgard is indeed your sorrow, but the path to mending is not found in a single place, nor by a single hand. It raised one immense, crystalline arm, pointing towards the swirling vortex within the archway. The heart of the Whispering Peaks is a gateway, not a solution. It leads to the weaving lands, where the threads of creation are spun. It is one of the many wellsprings, interconnected, sustaining the tapestry of your world. Ethelgard's magic fades because its threads are tangling, breaking, and its loom sisters sleep. Elara frowned. Loom sisters? Threads of creation? I don't understand. The magic of Ethelgard, and indeed all realms connected to the Great Loom, is not a simple flow, but a living tapestry, the sentinel explained, its voice gaining a subtle nuance of ancient wisdom. It is woven by beings called the Loom Sisters, guardians of the primal energies. Long ago, they slumbered, or perhaps were forced into a deep sleep, and the threads began to fray. One such sister, the Weaver of Dreams, tended the loom that nourished Ethelgard. She sleeps now in the Whispering Vale, a realm beyond this gateway. Elara looked at the shimmering vortex. Zo, I must awaken this Weaver of Dreams. To awaken a loom sister is to re-establish the connection, to mend the threads that have broken, the sentinel confirmed. But it is a perilous journey. The Whispering Vale is a land of forgotten dreams and shifting realities, guarded by illusions and the remnants of ancient sorrows. To navigate it, you will need more than courage. You will need a key. A key? Elara asked, her heart sinking slightly. She had hoped for a straightforward path, but this sounded far more complex. The sentinel slowly lowered its arm, and a faint shimmering began at its feet. The ground around it pulsed, and from the crystalline stone, a small, radiant object began to rise. It was a sphere, no larger than her fist, made of perfectly clear crystal, but within it swirled an iridescent mist, like a captured cloud of aurora borealis. It pulsed with a soft, warm light, vibrating with a gentle hum. This is a seed of lumina, the sentinel explained. It holds a spark of the weaving land's own magic, a fragment of pure creation. It will not unlock the weaver's slumber directly, but it will guide you, illuminate the hidden paths, and resonate with the truth behind the illusions of the Whispering Vale. It is a compass for the heart, a light for the soul. The crystal sphere floated gently towards Elara, hovering before her. She reached out, her fingers brushing its cool, smooth surface. A warmth spread through her hand, up her arm, and settled in her chest, mingling with her own magic. It felt like a tiny humming star. "But beware," the sentinel warned, its voice resonating with a deeper gravity. "The Whispering Vale is not merely a place of illusions. It is a place where forgotten desires and unfulfilled hopes manifest. It can ensnare the unwary, showing them what they most long for, tempting them from their true path. Your conviction, your pure intent, will be your strongest shield, and your companion." The sentinel's glowing gaze shifted to Flicker, who had stopped his low growl, and was now curiously sniffing at the floating Lumina seed. "Will be your anchor to reality. His joy, his unburdened spirit, can pierce the strongest illusion." Flicker let out a soft bark, as if understanding, and nudged the seed with his nose. "Thank you," Elara said, clutching the Lumina seed. It felt incredibly precious, a fragile hope. "I will not fail, Ethelgard." "The path is long, Elara of Ethelgard," the sentinel concluded, its form slowly beginning to recede back into the mist, its light dimming. "But the first thread has been respun. May your heart be your guide and your light be true." As the sentinel faded completely, the whispers of the peaks gently returned, no longer disorienting, but sounding like a chorus of encouragement, a soft, ethereal cheer. The Lumina seed pulsed steadily in her hand, a warm, guiding beacon. Elara looked at the shimmering vortex within the crystal archway. The weaving lands. The Whispering Vale. A sleeping loom sister. It was a daunting task, far grander than she had imagined. But she was no longer the hesitant girl who had left her village. She had faced the sorrow of a fading world, connected with its struggling magic, and found strength within herself. And now, she held a piece of pure magic, a literal guiding light. With Flicker trotting steadfastly beside her, the luminous seed glowing softly in her palm, Elara stepped forward into the swirling luminous vortex of the crystal archway, into the unknown. The journey to awaken the Weaver of Dreams and save Ethelgard was far from over, but the path ahead, though shrouded in the mysteries of the Whispering Vale, now held a glimmer of promising light. Wow! The transition through the vortex was less a journey, and more a sensation of being dissolved and reformed. It wasn't unpleasant, merely utterly disorienting. For a moment, Elara felt like a single thread herself, stretched and rewoven into a new pattern. Then, with a soft ege pope that echoed more in her mind than in the air, she stood on solid ground once more. The world that greeted her was utterly breathtaking, yet subtly unnerving. This was indeed the Whispering Vale, and it lived up to its name. The air itself seemed to shimmer, as if woven from countless layers of light and shadow. The sky above was not twilight, but a perpetual dawn, painted in hues of soft rose, lavender, and gold, yet the light cast was diffuse, as if filtered through an invisible shimmering curtain. They stood on a path of pearlescent sand that crunched softly underfoot, leading into a landscape that defied ordinary description. Everything here seemed to be made of dreams solidified. Trees with trunks like polished mother-of-pearl spiraled upwards, their leaves a riot of impossible colors, shimmering silver, deep magenta, and translucent teal, constantly shifting and whispering like silk in a breeze. Flowers bloomed in cascades of light, their petals unfurling in slow motion, releasing fragrances that were both familiar and entirely new. The scent of rain on dry earth mingled with forgotten childhood memories and the distant sound of laughter. But there was an underlying strangeness, a sense of unreality that prickled at Elara's skin. The shadows here didn't fall correctly. They seemed to have a life of their own, stretching and contracting independently of any light source. Distant mountains in the horizon were not solid peaks, but appeared to be made of solidified clouds, perpetually reforming themselves into new, fantastical shapes. Flicker, usually so boisterous, was subdued. He walked close to Elara's heels, his tail tucked a little, his ears constantly swiveling. His nose twitched, but he didn't seem to pick up any discernible scents, only the overwhelming sweet-sour tang of adrengrine. The Lumina seed in Elara's hand pulsed with a gentle, steady rhythm, its internal mist swirling faster, a small, reassuring warmth against her skin. "The Sentinel said this place holds illusions," Elara murmured to Flicker, her voice hushed. "And manifestations of forgotten desires." As if on cue, a shimmering figure coalesced from the pearlescent mist ahead. It was a young woman, her face gentle and familiar, her eyes full of warmth. It was her mother, exactly as Elara remembered her from her earliest childhood, before the weariness of the fading world had etched lines of worry into her face. "Elara, my dearest," the apparition said, her voice like a soft chime. She held out her arms. "You've come home. Oh, I've missed you so. Why did you leave? Stay with me, my love. All the troubles of Athelgard are far away here. We can be together, always." A powerful ache seized Elara's heart. Her mother. They. The one person she longed to see, to comfort, to assure that everything would be all right. The illusion was perfect, utterly convincing. Her mother's smile, the way her head tilted, the gentle crinkle around her eyes, it was all there. A part of Elara wanted to run into those open arms, to forget the quest, to simply surrender to the warmth and safety of home. But the lumina seed in her hand suddenly burned, a sharp, insistent heat that spread through her palm. Flicker let out a sharp bark, a sound full of warning, and tugged at her trousers, pulling her back. Elara gasped, the heat of the seed cutting through the fog of longing. She looked at Flicker, then at the luminous seed, then back at the illusion. Her mother's form seemed to waver slightly, a barely perceptible shimmer at the edges. Encore to reality. His joy, his unburdened spirit. One neverya, adornance, ilsi. Elara clenched her jaw. "Mother," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I cannot. This isn't real. You are a dream." The illusion's smile faltered. "What are you saying, child? Am I not here? Don't you love me?" A tear, perfectly formed, rolled down its cheek. The luminous seed pulsed faster, a bright, golden light emanating from it. Flicker growled again, a deeper, more insistent sound, and nudged her forward, away from the apparition. "I love you, mother," Elara whispered, the words tearing at her heart. "More than anything, but I cannot stay. I have a purpose. Athelgard needs me." With those words, spoken with absolute conviction and a heart wrung with sorrow, the illusion flickered violently. It wavered like smoke, its beautiful features distorting, stretching, until it dissolved entirely into the shimmering air, leaving behind only the scent of wistful regret. Elara stood there, breathing heavily, tears stinging her eyes. It had been so real. The pain of leaving her mother, even an illusion of her, was profound. She knelt, burying her face in Flicker's fur, drawing comfort from his warm, solid presence. "Thank you, Flicker," she whispered. "Thank you." Flicker licked her cheek, a soft purring rumble in his chest. He was her anchor indeed. They continued along the pearlescent path, the luminous seed now glowing with a calmer, but still vibrant, light. The landscape here was a riot of impossible beauty, but Elara now perceived it with a new caution. Every rustle of leaves, every shimmer of light, every sweet scent, held the potential for another illusion, another test of her resolve. The path began to rise gently, leading them towards a forest where the mother-of-pearl trees grew denser, their shifting, colorful leaves creating a kaleidoscope of light and shadow. The air grew cooler here, and the whispers returned. Not the ancient wisdom of the peaks, but soft, enticing murmurings. "Rest here. All your burdens can be laid down. Power awaits. A kingdom for you to rule." Elara focused on the luminous seed, letting its steady warmth guide her. It seemed to pull gently in a specific direction, a subtle magnetism towards the heart of the dream forest. As they delved deeper, the trees grew taller, their spiraling trunks so close together they formed living archways, dripping with luminous moss that glowed like fallen stars. The ground underfoot softened, becoming a carpet of iridescent fungi that pulsed with gentle light. Strange, shy creatures darted through the undergrowth, creatures like miniature dragons with butterfly wings, or small deer with antlers made of woven moonlight, their eyes like polished obsidian. They were beautiful, ethereal, and utterly silent. The whispers intensified, becoming more personal, more tempting. They spoke of her deepest desires, of a world where Athelgard was restored instantly, where she was hailed as a hero, where she never had to face another challenge. Visions flickered at the edge of her sight, a grand throne, a crown of starlight, the grateful faces of her people, her mother smiling, vibrant and young. Elara felt the pull, the insidious lure of an easy solution. "What, If I could just wish Ethelgard well. What if I could simply be given the power to fix everything, without this endless struggle? Whoa. But the Lumina seed pulsed sharply, a jolt of warmth that spread through her arm. Flicker barked, a series of short, sharp yaps, pulling at her trousers again, his eyes wide and worried. He looked past her, towards a particularly bright shimmer in the trees, then back at her, as if urging her to see through it. Elara closed her eyes, clutching the seed. She felt the powerful current of temptation, the yearning for an easier path. But she also remembered the elder's words about her connection to the true, struggling magic of Ethelgard. The magic she had felt in the dying plants, the sorrow she had tasted in the fading streams. That magic was real, tangible, and it demanded effort, understanding and sacrifice, not a magical wish. She opened her eyes. The visions of grandeur faded, replaced by the shimmering reality of the dream forest. The Lumina seed glowed steadily, and Flicker whimpered, then nudged her forward. "Thank you, Flicker," she whispered, her voice firmer this time. "Let's keep going, huh?" They walked for what felt like hours, deeper into the shimmering forest. The Lumina seed, her faithful guide, led them to a clearing bathed in an otherworldly golden light. In the center of the clearing stood a single, colossal tree, its trunk wider than any house, its branches reaching towards the perpetual dawn sky. Its leaves were not shimmering, but glowed with a soft, constant golden light, illuminating the entire clearing. From its mighty branches hung countless delicate threads, shimmering like spider silk, catching the light in 1,000 hues. They drifted and swayed in the gentle unseen breeze, each one a whisper of energy, a thread of magic. This was it. This was the loom. Or at least a part of it. The Lumina seed in Elara's hand vibrated excitedly, humming with a deep, resonant tone. At the base of the colossal tree, nestled amongst its massive roots, was a small natural alcove, draped with glowing moss. Within the alcove a figure lay, bathed in the golden light of the tree. It was a woman, seemingly asleep, her form ethereal, almost translucent. Her skin shimmered with the same pearlescent quality as the path, and her hair, long and flowing, was like spun moonlight, spread around her like a halo. She wore a simple gown woven from glowing threads, and in her hands, resting gently on her chest, lay a delicate, intricate weaving shuttle, made of what looked like polished starlight. This must be the weaver of dreams. The Loom Sister. Elara approached slowly, her heart pounding with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The air here was thick with magic, a palpable hum that vibrated through her entire being. The Lumina seed pulsed in her hand, resonating with the sleeping weaver. "She sleeps," Elara whispered, awed. Flicker, however, started to growl. Not a deep, warning growl, but a low, uncertain rumble. His fur bristled slightly, and he looked around the clearing, his eyes darting nervously. Elara scanned the clearing, following Flicker's gaze. The golden light from the tree was beautiful, but she noticed something unsettling. The threads hanging from the tree, while luminous, were not all perfect. Some were dull, frayed, or even snapped, their ends dangling lifelessly. And around the weaver's alcove, though hidden by the golden light, she could make out darker patches, like shadows that hadn't quite been banished. Then she saw it. Coiled around one of the massive roots of the loom tree, half hidden in the deeper shadows, was a long serpentine form. It wasn't solid, but seemed to be made of solidified gloom and despair, its scales shimmering with a sickly, oily sheen. Its eyes, twin points of malevolent red light, were fixed on the sleeping weaver. It was draining her, slowly absorbing the light and life from the Loom Sister, making the threads of the loom fray. This was not merely a sleeping guardian. This was a parasite of despair, feeding on the weaver's slumber, on the fading dreams of Ethelgard. The luminous seed flared in Elara's hand, its light suddenly bright and fierce, pushing back the encroaching shadows. Flicker barked, a defiant, challenging sound, and began to growl furiously at the shadowy serpent. Elara knew with a sudden chilling certainty that simply waking the weaver would not be enough. She had to banish this creature of shadow, this thief of dreams, before the Loom Sister could truly awaken and mend the threads of Ethelgard. The true challenge had just begun. The serpent hissed, its form coiling and uncoiling, a ripple of fear and malice. It lunged, not at Elara, but at the very air around the cocoon of the weaver, attempting to sever the last fragile connections. "No!" Elara cried, holding the luminous seed aloft. Its light pulsed, a rhythmic heartbeat of pure, vibrant energy. She remembered the warmth it had given her, the forgotten dreams it had shown her. This wasn't just light, it was concentrated hope, distilled joy, the very essence of Ethelgard's sleeping magic. Flicker, sensing her intent, let out a piercing bark and darted forward, snapping at the serpent's shadowy tail. The serpent recoiled, its form flickering as if a candle in a strong breeze. It couldn't stand the proximity of such pure, undiluted spirit. Elara closed her eyes for a moment, focusing all her will, all her rediscovered wonder, into the seed. She imagined the dreams of Ethelgard, not just her own, but the dreams of every tree, every river, every star-furred creature. She poured her own belief into the luminous seed, urging it to bloom. The seed pulsed brighter, not blindingly, but with a gentle, pervasive glow that filled the chamber, pushing the edges of the dark creature back like a tide. The shadowy serpent shrieked, a sound like grinding stone and forgotten whispers. It writhed, trying to escape the encroaching light, but there was nowhere to hide. The lumina seed was not merely illuminating. It was each filling the space with the very stuff of dreams. With a final desperate thrash, the serpent tried to dissipate into the shadows it created, but the lumina seed's light followed, clinging to it like dawn to mist. Slowly, painfully, the dark form began to unravel, its shadowy threads fraying and dissolving into nothingness, leaving behind only a faint, lingering chill that quickly faded. Silence descended, broken only by Flicker's soft panting, and the gentle hum now emanating from the weaver's cocoon. The lumina seed, its fierce glow softened, settled back into Elara's palm, a warm, contented ember. Then, the cocoon began to shimmer. Threads of starlight and moonbeam pulsed within, growing brighter and more defined. With a soft sigh that echoed through the chamber, the cocoon dissolved, revealing the weaver. She was a being of pure light and silken threads, her eyes like twin galaxies, her hands gracefully reaching out to the vast shimmering loom. "The dreams return," the weaver murmured, her voice like the rustling of leaves in an ancient forest. Her slender fingers danced across the loom, gathering the broken threads of Ethelgard's forgotten dreams, weaving them back into the tapestry of reality. As she worked, a soft, vibrant light began to spread, first through the chamber, then outward through the very fabric of the world. Elara felt it, a warmth returning to the air, a whisper of forgotten melodies, the faint scent of blooming night jasmine. Ethelgard was awakening, its magic renewed. Flicker nudged her hand and looked up at her, his eyes shining with shared triumph. Elara smiled, feeling a lightness in her heart she hadn't known was missing. The lumina seed pulsed softly in her hand, a reminder of the dreams she had saved, and the magic she had rediscovered within herself. Her own forgotten dream, the one of soaring through starlit skies, felt closer now, more real than ever before. With Flicker by her side and the weaver's song filling the air, Elara knew Ethelgard would dream again. And so would she.